Welcome to Green and Red, scrappy politics for scrappy people. A regular podcast on radical environmental and anti-capitalist politics. Brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, in Berkeley, California. And as almost always, I am joined by
Bob Bazanko in Houston.
Yep. And we have a return guest. Last month, we talked with, or in December, over a month ago now, we talked with Carla Toche in Lima, Peru, talking about the situation in Peru. The situation has only gotten worse, which includes a lot of violence on the street. Over 60 protesters have been killed in clashes with government forces. There's been a general strike since January 4th going on. In the city of Juliaca, like 17 or 18 people were massacred by government forces. Government has been targeting journalists and medics. They've been raiding hospitals and people's homes and things like that. And then there's also like a big part that the US is playing in this as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So welcome back to Green and Red, Carla.
And thank you very much, and thank you for the space for this meeting. Is very necessary to still talking about what's going on here in my country. So thank you very much.
Maybe you can just start with the latest news and give us the most recent updates.
Well, and since the last time we talked, the number of people killed by the police force has been rising. And just as you just said, the last time we talked, we knew that around between 20 and 30 people have been killed by the police force. Right now, we know that are more than 60 civilians killed by the police force, and one of the victims was a police also. So, and also in addition to that, I need to say that it's also, we are counting around 700 people injured because of the clashes, because of the protest also. And this is necessary to say because it's not common at all to have this kind of numbers every time we have a protest going on, or every time we have a political crisis in this country. We always have political crisis. It's not something untypical. What is untypical is how this government is responding to calm down the crisis, which is not after one killed person. We cannot say it's a situation to talk about, and we have to talk. We need to talk about the peace. We need to talk a dialogue between every agent, every activist with a government. Even if we are talking about one person killed or assassinated by the police, but right now we are talking about 60 people. So it's not healthy at all. It's not common at all. So this situation also can show us in perspective how we cannot say that the democracy system is only to go every 5 years and vote for a candidate or vote for a president or for a Congress woman or congressman. Is not enough. It's not enough talking about the democracy only in those formal terms. But also right now, we need to say that the democracy is also how we are going to manage, we are going to build a situation to guarantee anything, to guarantee everything, to make a living situation, a living situation with peace. And this is not happening right now. Also, I need to say that the number of victims is not a random result. It's not like that police force went crazy and start to kill everyone everywhere. No, it's not something like that. It's not random at all. If we start mapping, if we start to look where and these people have been killed, we will see that the big number, the large number of the killed persons, of the people who have been killed, are in the center and south of the country, are not from Lima, are not from the big cities. They are from the countryside. They are for the poorest side of the country. That's not a random situation. So we need to say that. Also, we need to say something that in December, just few voices pointed out in the media, in the press, that there are exactly the same zones. There are two things here. There are exactly the same zones and electoral zones, electoral territories that vote in favor of Pedro Castillo. That's the first thing we need to say. And the second thing we need to say are that these territories are the same, exactly the same territories that years before have problems about the control of the water, the control of the territory, the control of the agro industry, the control of of the resources. Exactly the same places. So we are not saying that is not something that maybe was out of control of the police or out of control of the government, that maybe they didn't know what they are deciding or what they are doing. No, they know perfectly well where they are having these kind of massacres, why they are deciding these kind of massacres, and who are the people who that have been killed and have been punished by this government. So this is.
Okay. Well, could you talk a little bit about the resistance, which has been growing? Is it students? Is it churches, labor groups, indigenous people? Who is kind of out there in the streets protesting against this repression?
Okay. Well, here right now, after more than a month, almost 2 months of protest, now we can talk. Now we can say. Now we can see that many kind of estimates, many kind of movements, many kind of identities are adding to this protest. I'm talking about universities. I'm talking about students. I'm talking about even the how do you say between primary school and university school, high school, the high school students, yeah, the high school students, also workers, the union workers also, they appear after 1 month, but now they are on the streets also. But mostly what is happening right now is that in the countryside, we are talking about a huge crisis about there are not food enough for the families. We are talking about a crisis in about how how to produce more food, how to produce more products to the agro industry. So most of the people that are mobilizing right now during the protest are producing families, but monoproducing families. Monoproducing families. I mean that they produce only one type of product, or potato. Only, and I don't know, like 80% of the families inside of in the countryside, 100%, they only produce potato. And I'm not talking about a potato that you can buy from the store and put it and start to fry to have a French fries. No, I'm talking about a product that is not industrialized. It's not an industrial product. So it's how do you say this in English? Like primary product. It's a primary product. So most of them are the core of these mobilizations, are the core of this protest. Because also we need to say this, here in this country, Even every time the media or the press are talking about the increase the increase of the cost in the product. That's not true at all. And only here, for example, in Lima, we are talking about that the food is most of the food we consume is an import product. So the value will increase because of international factors. Inside, in the countryside, the reason is totally different. It's because they don't have enough support for the ministers or for the government, or because they never have then through an industrialized process, or because there are no water enough, because the land is not good enough. So there's a huge crisis about how to manage the resources, the basic resources to survive. And this problem is a historical problem. And right now, that's the reason, and one of many reasons, all of these families decide to go to protest for 2 months, and they will keep protesting, but demanding a new constitution. It's not only about Pedro Castillo, it's not only about a new general electoral situation, but is the necessity to have a new constitution, because with a new constitution, we will have new and better rules to decide how to produce our own food, how to manage, or how to and build a better situation for those who doesn't have work. There are almost of the 90% of the families in this country, and how to be able to have some water to drink. Just 2 days ago, I was reading in the news that almost 3 billion of Peruvians are not able to, doesn't have access to water for drink. I mean, if that's not a reason to go for a protest, I don't know what enough reason to make this situation, you know. So, and what I'm saying is that right now we are seeing many kind of crises, but historical crisis that finally had or seen or was able to express outside the local situation, because every time this kind of situation was just a local crisis, a local situation. So the government was just, okay, well, we will see, we will go to this, I don't know, to this, to Puno, to Juliaca, or to Cusco, to know and to talk how we can survive this local crisis. But it's not only Juliaca, it's not only Ayacucho, it's not only Cajamarca, it's all the country, all the Peru. So that's why it's not only about the students or workers or I don't know, or politicians, left organizations or left parties, but this is an expression of the families that doesn't have anything for themselves. They just cannot survive this anymore. So that's how I see it.
How is the political crisis, the general strike, the protests affecting the wealthy classes? Is the wealthy class, like, the economy is not working the way it should, and so they're not getting money? Is that why we're seeing the government repression?
As maybe you know, here, since the constitution that rules everything right now, that is Alberto Fujimori's constitution, we had this economic system that, how do you say in English? Neoliberalism.
Neoliberalism.
Yeah, because of that, the precarization of the work has been this has been like an illegal situation, but for somehow turns out to be the rule of everything. It's a situation that not only precarized, that not only is not, and we are not able to survive this kind of situation, this kind of abuse of power for the elite, because it's only a few families that have everything, that control the bank, that control the finance, that control the food import, that control even the universities, the roads. There are only 5 families that control everything. The rest, we have to see how we are going to survive, and each day by each day. Also, the majority doesn't have anything to survive for. So what is an economic impact in this government, I want to say, is not only a problem that appears in this government, but is like a summatory, I don't know how to say it in English, it's like every year since 1993, and there have been I have to look for this word, summatoria, a summation of economic policies that only brings a vulnerable situation for the majority in this country. That's what's happening right now. That's why I need to say this again. It's not only about a new Congress or a new president, but a new constitution, because this right now is the result of the constitution we have right now. This is a result. It's not only about this government that is a political, they have a responsibility and they have to answer about, but the root of everything, the root of this problem is the constitution of Alberto Fujimori.
Was that what Castillo was trying to do when he dissolved Congress? Didn't he want to have a new constitution and a new Congress, or was that kind of part of why they got rid of him?
Actually, that's a point. Actually, I really don't understand this behavior of the right wing, especially the political group of Fujimori, because if they are able to do politics, it's because of their own constitution that they made it like a new constitution in their time. I mean, they are the result of the new constitution, and right now they are saying we don't need a new constitution because that's not about the democracy. The democracy is not about new constitution. That the constitution has to be one and all the time. But they are product of a new constitution, so of course they are talking about their own interest because they know what they are going to lose if there's a new constitution product of this kind of popular movements. They know what they are going to lose. That's why they don't want a new constitution. Any other kind of any other kind of argument idea is just an excuse. It's just an excuse to not allow to people to decide about their own present and their own future, like they were able to decide in their time. So it's not fair at all.
You know, another thing I've seen is accusations of outside agitation, which is, you know, a pretty common trope that we see when there's like protests and unrest. Like Assad in Syria said that during the Arab Spring. It happens here in the U.S. all the time when there's protesters from a different state going places. I've seen where Bolivians and Evo Morales were actually prevented from coming into Peru at one point. But I'm just wondering if you could comment on the sort of outside agitator story that's being put out.
And about the other countries, about the other, okay, well, maybe you already know what happened to Evo Morales. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's an an absurd. I mean, Evo Morales right now has his own problems inside Bolivia. He has to respond about, I mean, Evo Morales is not thinking or talking about Peru. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about what the Peruvian Congress is deciding against him or against his the people of his organization. He doesn't care because it's not about him. Like it's not about what happened to the ambassador and to the Mexican ambassador, and it doesn't. It's not about Honduras. It's not about Petro in Colombia. It's not about them, but it's about how this government is deciding to project or to give an answer, to give a result, to give an image and a policy for all of us. What I'm saying is that maybe you know that here in Peru, we have a really harsh and really dark history about terrorism. So this just happened 30 years ago. It's very recent, but we were able to survive that situation, that chapter of our history. But somehow, right now, this government, as any government we had since 2000 until now, any government has as a policy to point out that any kind of protest or any kind of political leadership is a terrorist. Any government but this one. So since if we are talking about Dina Boluarte as a president or her ministers or the Congress, anytime they hear a voice that is uncomfortable to them, they will point out that that voice is a terrorist voice. And to teach us how not to behave, they will say to us, look out, you have to behave quietly, you have to be a quiet citizen, you have to talk in favor of peace. Meantime, I'm going to kill you with my police force. And if you want to insist, you will see what I'm going to do to Evo Morales. You will see what I'm going to do with any other president, with any other country. You know, so it's not something that Colombia or Mexico or Honduras are going to affect their international relations with Peru because of these decisions they are making. But I believe they are doing what they are doing because they want to teach us how to behave or how to do the things in order to not affect their own interest. So if I don't want to be pointed out as a terrorist, I have to be quiet. I cannot say anything, or I will be attached or how do you say this? Vinculada, linked to the communist force of Bolivia, or the communist force of Honduras, or communist force of Cuba. I mean, it's an absurd. But this is like the Rita Segato is a feminist that she said something about pedagogía del terror, the horror pedagogy, something like, I will teach you, and not because because I'm a good teacher, but because I will show you the horror of what I'm able to do against your dignity, against your life. That's how I'm going to teach you. So I can see that's a policy right now of this government, and if we are talking about the international community. Yeah.
What most people now want a new constitution. What kind of constitution do they want? What would they want in it? Would it be a new political system? Does it have to do with like resource rights, economic rights, land?
And there's, in that point, there is no a strong consensus about that because there are many interests to talk about. That's the reason we need a constituent assembly. It's not enough and saying or demanding a new constitution because it's not about just one person or a group of persons will decide for all of us. We need to see a formula and a good formula where every kind of voice will have their own representation in this kind of assembly. That's why it's not enough to say a new constitution because if I want right now myself, Carla Toche, will write a new constitution for what I think will be the best. But I cannot talk. I mean, I can talk by myself, but I cannot talk by the third, but all the Peruvians in my country. I cannot do that. Anyone can do that, not even the Congress. That's why we are saying it's not enough to have a new constitution, but a constituent assembly where we can meet our leaderships, our leaderships to decide a new constitution to be able to recognize the needs and the agenda and the new form, the new kind we need, the new kind of citizenship we need in this country. Because somehow here in Peru, when we talk about citizens, we are only talking about a few kind of people, a kind of citizen. Because the other kind of people, they are not treated like a citizens. So we need to talk about these many kinds of being a Peruvian in this country, because there's not only one kind of Peruvian, there's not only one kind of being a citizen in this country. There are many kinds, and all of these kinds of being citizen, they have to be recognized and they have to be treated as equals. And that's not happening right now. That's why we need an assembly. It's not enough if the Congress will write a new constitution, or if somebody will write a new constitution. We need everyone to participate in this kind of activity.
How have I've read a lot of indigenous people from the rural areas have been very much involved in the protests and the strike. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. It seems like a large number of folks are from like indigenous territories.
The indigenous territories are very vulnerable right now. Are very vulnerable because of first because of the how do you say this? The climate change. Starting for that, and they are very vulnerable because of the climate change and because of the policy against the climate. I mean, they're negationist, I think is the word in English. Denial. There are some congressmen and some congresswomen that deny the climate change. They deny. They say they doesn't exist. I mean, come on. I mean, it's something. We cannot deny this fact, but somehow they deny it. So because they deny it, they don't recognize the indigenous territories as an indigenous territories, and because they don't recognize it, they promote several policies against their own, against their security, against their against their own integrity. You know, for example, right now we have this figure. How do you say this? The dialogue, well, exactly in this translate dialogue table, I don't know how to say it properly, where the state must call, for example, if I'm an indigenous and there is an industry that want to build a road in my territory, well, the I don't know, the lawyer maybe of this industry must sit down with me, myself and somebody from the government to talk about an agreement in favor of everyone. That's for law. I mean, there is a law and there is an international law that protect me as an indigenous to have this kind of this kind of dialogue. But what is happening right now in the Congress is that they are denying, because I'm not an indigenous, because they are not climate change, because they are not anything like that, and they want to do this kind of lobby for their own favor. They will approve many kind of bills against the indigenous, against the indigenous culture, and against the indigenous territory. And because of that, there is we will see that there is few presence of the indigenous federations in the protest, because they are under attack and they have to protect their own territory right now. They cannot move from there, because in the moment they will move from their territory to come here to the city, the industry and the military force will take their territories, and they will not allow them to return. They are under attack right now. Yeah.
How much is like Petroperu supporting people in Congress who are doing climate denial, who want to not support indigenous federation and rights and et cetera?
To be like very honest, very honest, Petroperu is a weak force right now, but it's not because of the situation of in this moment, but it's a weak force since, I don't know, maybe since 30 years ago. Petroperu is is more like a, how can I say this? Reserve, a political reserve for the Congress, and it's not about how to administer, how to manage these kind of resources. They lost that power, and why? We can talk only about that in maybe in another time. But to be completely honest with all of you, is not like it was in the beginning, and when they create Petroperu with the idea to create a managed force for the state, not for the government, but for the state, for the Peruvian state, to make an industry to manage this kind of resources. Well, something like that, because of Fujimori, lost a lot of power. Somehow it turned out to be more like a reservoir for the government, but not for the state, and to protect the government interest and not the state interest. That is the people interest. So it's really weak right now.
When these protests are taking place, who is out there fighting against the people? Is it the national military? Is it local police, paramilitary groups?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because after what happened with Sendero Luminoso and all the history we have of terrorism, we thought that those who will break the human rights will be the military force. But what we are seeing right now is not about the military force, but the police. It's the police who are breaking the human, this pact, I don't know, this and convenient,
Covenant?
they are breaking the human rights. They are
Yeah.
one second, yeah, the violation of human rights is the police, and that's a problem because when I really hope more soon than ever, we will be able to demand who is responsible of all of these situations, but not only in terms of en términos judiciales, judicial terms,
Judicial, yeah.
judicial terms, but political terms. Who are responsible of all of this? So if we are saying that the police are the responsible of these violations of human rights, and is the police, the institutions that, on the contrary, must guarantee the security of everyone. So what we are talking about? And the police, like 5 years ago, if we start to have a review of the surveys, the survey,
Survey.
the surveys, most of the Peruvians had a really nice, I don't know, not they I'm so sorry, I have to practice my English. Confianza.
Your English is much better than our Spanish. So.
They had they had this trust feeling in the police. They had distrust in the police years ago. Right now, after all of this happening right now, we are able to, we will still be able to say that we trust in the police, that we will trust the police to secure our life, to secure ourselves. I mean, is also because the military force, they are not like a common agent. I mean, if I go down for the stairs and go to the store, I will not see a military walking in the streets. I will see a police. And what will make me believe, or what will make me think that police is not looking for me, for example, or looking for my neighbor, or looking for my friends? And maybe that's why, that's maybe because he's around my house, near my block. That trust is broken, is totally broken. So what kind of society we will be able to build if the police force has lost any ability or capacity to show that we can trust on them? And it's not possible. It's not possible at all.
Folks, you're listening to Carla Toche in Lima, Peru. We're talking about the political crisis in Peru. You're listening to the Green and Red podcast. Please check out our website, greenredpodcast.org, or check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of that stuff. Carla, I have another question about the real outside agitator, the agitador exterior, which is the United States government. And so there's been increasing media around money that the Biden administration has been sending to Peru since the coup happened. Lots of media around Lisa Kenna, who's the US ambassador, who's actually used to be in the Central Intelligence Agency before she became ambassador. And these facts are all emerging. But my first question would be, how are people in Peru, how are they viewing the United States involvement? Are they recognizing how involved the US is in this situation?
Well, and you just mentioned her, Lisa Kane. Lisa Kane is how you say her.
Kenna.
Kenna, okay. She somehow she was not in ambassador duties, but she was a part of this government. She was a part because she was having meetings with the ministers. I mean, and was not talking about relationships between two countries, but she was talking about how to make a war against the drug dealers or against the narco traffic. Not, but it was a very aggressive policy she was leading a very aggressive policy here in this country. She was having meetings. She had meet with ministers many times. She had meets with Dina Boluarte when she starting her government in the very same day she swore as a president. She had a meeting with the United States embassy here. I mean, also, right now I know, for example, today the how do you say this in English? Yes, the chancellor,
Chancellor.
the Peruvian chancellor today in the morning has a meeting with the head of the National Security Council over there in Washington, D.C. to talk about democracy in Peru. Come on. I mean, why you are going to talk with the head of the National Security Council about democracy? It's not, I mean, we know perfectly well and the agenda they are trying to build or they already built, but it's very obvious for everyone that if we are going to talk about responsibility in international dimension, we need to talk about the issues that linked and United States with the with Peruvian politics. It's very self-explanatory. And it's not only about the drug war or the traffic war. No, it's because here in Latin America, we have a large history about how United States always talk about to be against drug traffic or against drug politics or whatever, but in the meantime they are they finance they have these military politics also to provide a coup d'etat.
Mhm.
That's the story talking about. I'm not inventing anything here. I'm not saying something that is incorrect. That's how the story shows the relationships between Latin America and the United States.
That's
So
right. We've
I'm not
talked about it many times on this podcast.
Of course, I mean, I'm not afraid to commit and to making a mistake here. I mean, everything starts when Castillo, when the Chancellor of Castillo in that moment have a meet with
The
OAS.
Yeah. La OEA. Okay, everything starts there, and I don't want to forget in the moment the Bolivian chancellor said to everyone that they, as a Bolivian, they will not forgive and will not forget how the OEA behaved with Bolivia when they made a coup d'etat, because United States allowed them to do that. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, I really hope something like that will not happen here in my country, but like 2-3 months ago, let's see what's going on right now. So it's not something to speculate or it's not something about an imagination. It's a fact. It's a fact that United States have a lot of interest here in Peru, but not also because of what's going on here in solitary about Peru in solitary, but what's the meaning of control Peruvian territory for what is the resources, the Bolivian resources, the Brazilian resources, and the Colombian resources. It's not about the country by itself, but the how to manage the resources in the region of Latin America. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have other Latin Americans expressed support for the people like Lula or Mexico or Argentina or Honduras, Colombia, these other kind of left governments, leftish liberal governments?
Well, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and they just few days ago they have a reunion of Latin American governments in CELAC. I think it's a name in Spanish. I don't know how to say it in English, but just few days ago, they have a meeting of all the governments, all the presidents of South America, and in that meeting. Body from Chile say that he's against what's happening right now in Peru. Honduras, and not only say that she's against what's happening in Peru, but she wants Pedro Castillo to be again the president of Peru. So Dina Boluarte took her ambassador and out from the country. Mexico also AMLO already said that in Brazil, I believe Lula because he's taking care of a huge country left by Bolsonaro's politics. So I think that he has to manage this their own right. How do you say this? Far right, the far right forces in Brazil. And I think he sees that it's not convenient right now to open an opposition to the countries in South America because they need allies. And I think because he has a lot of experience in doing these kind of things, he doesn't need he needs more allies than enemies right now. But the rest of the countries, and they are very clear about what's going on right now, and they are announcing to the international press that in Peru right now, the human rights are being violated. And that's something we need to take care a lot, because after what happened with the judicial procesos judiciales, the judicial process, the judicial process against Alberto Fujimori, that was because of the violation of human rights here in Peru. After 20 years, we are talking again the human rights are being violated by the own government. 20 years after what happened to Alberto Fujimori. So right now, all the international human rights movements are like, it's outrageous what's happening right now, because we thought after what happened with Alberto Fujimori, this kind of situation will never happen again, but it's not like that at all. So internationally talking about, the political force, the left organization, the left forces are demanding to open investigations to see or to figure out who are the responsible of all these situations. That's for sure. What the problem is inside the political forces inside this country that are not clear enough sometimes to determine who are the responsibles and what we are going to do about that. But if we talk about outside in other countries, the voice is very clear, as I can see.
What do you? Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I think we're kind of getting close to the end, so I was just going to ask where you think the protests are headed. They've been, well, they haven't been nonviolent by the government, but so far they've been, do you think they'll get bigger, get worse, become more violent? Where do you think this is headed? I know, like in the United States, it's not a big story here. You don't hear much about it. Today, 20 Democratic representatives wrote a letter to the president, but in the United States, they're considered the left. So, they don't have very much power. So it's really not much of a story here. And so, and the U.S., obviously supports Boluarte and the coup government. So, what do you think will happen? Will there be more of these civic groups, these labor unions, these land movements, churches, students? Also, actually, I forgot to ask you this earlier. They've been going into campuses to get people too, haven't they? The police, have they gone onto campuses to go after people? Because usually those were, like sanctuaries, churches, campuses, things like that.
Okay, there are many things here. Right now, the government has established like a firm hand policy, and there's something like that. The last time something like that happened was with Alberto Fujimori, and that was a dictatorship. So right now we are living a dictatorship, even if she is using the democracy mask. But this firm hand policy is only seen in a dictatorship. That's the first point. The second point, until now, if we are talking about 60 people that have been killed by the police force, was the result of the use of the non-lethal weapons, the non-lethal weapons, like for example, the tear gas. But until today, because today, or exactly since yesterday, the government has authorized the police to use lethal weapons to unblock roads. So unfortunately, we have to expect to the number of people being killed to have more people, to being killed by this government. Okay, that's a second. The third point is that there is also a harassment policy against the university. For example, in my university, and that is the first university in all the region of Latin America, that is San Marcos University, the students union had decided to open the doors and to provide a shelter for the protests, for the people that came here to Lima to have this protest. They opened the door to offer some shelter, to offer some food, to offer some a nice place to sleep instead of being sleeping in the street. And the answer of the university authorities was to allow the police force to interrupt and to break the university doors and to kidnap almost 200 people. They kidnapped them, and I say they kidnapped because they didn't have the order. They didn't have, they didn't have the permission. They didn't have the permission to do that. They just did it because they think they can do that kind of abuse. They took almost 192 people. They took out from the university. They took them to a direction that in Spanish we say Dirección contra el Terrorismo, that in English will be something like the office, the Bureau Against Terrorism Force.
Counterterrorism,
like
yeah. They're doing that in Atlanta in the United States. So
okay, so something like that. And 2 days after, 2 or 3 days after, they kidnapped these 192 persons, 192 citizens. They went to the press to say, well, after our investigations, we decide to set them free because they didn't have anything to worry about. So why they took them to almost to the jail for 3 days without any order to do that? That's a kidnapping. I don't think I'm wrong saying that. When they finally they decide to set them free, these citizens say to the press that they have been victims of torture, of physical psychological torture. To the woman, for example, they undress all the women they undressed them, and they start to touch their body. That's, come on, I mean, that's a violation to their bodies. And they took a 5-year-old girl to this bureau, a 5-year-old girl. And I will send you to both of us the video to your email. There is a video, a 5-year-old girl, and with her mother, and going inside this office. And they took them until 2 days ago. After 2 days ago, they sent them free. Was outrageous. Also, there is apparently, and there has been an investigation about that, but there is a girl who is who say that actually she was a victim of sexual harassment also. So that's a fact. That's a testimony. That's somebody saying that. That's why I don't understand why there are some people until now that have doubts to categorize this situation as a dictatorship right now happening in Peru. The police, not even the military force, the police force are kidnapping people, are torturing, and there are testimonies of physical and psychological tortures against a large amount of people, of citizens, and with any even suspects. They don't even have a ticket, how do you say, a traffic ticket. They don't have anything, but just because they are protesting is apparently reason enough to abuse against them.
This is a very difficult time
Yes.
in Lima, and here in Memphis and Atlanta, in Palestine, and all over. And the same thing is happening with the same type of people.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, we are not talking about, I don't know, Ukraine or Palestine or Cuba, because they love to talk about Cuba, or they love to talk about Venezuela, the dictatorship in Venezuela. I mean, what about, let's talk about what's happening right now here.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, if Cuba killed 60 people in the streets, the US would have troops going there.
Come on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Professor Carla Toche, thank you so much, and be safe. What you're doing is really inspirational. So thank you.
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh yeah, we're always happy to have you back on anytime you want.
Thanks.
Folks, we've been talking about the political crisis in Peru with Professor Carla Toche. If you like what you're hearing, definitely follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, because there's many of you who have. And then also, if you want to make a donation, go to greenandredpodcast.org and hit the support button, or go to our Patreon and become a recurring donor at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And everyone out there, stay safe and make trouble. And we'll talk to you all again real soon.
Y ahora, con mucho amor y bastante cariño, los orientales de Paramonga.